Everyone doing? Coming back with some more explanations. Because, of course, that shit ain't easy. I'm not expecting it to be easy for people, but like I said, there's more and more and more things kind of pouring through, and there's more and more nuances and details to it. So, even with the thing that I left on Gumroad, there's always more kind of definition and clarification. And one thing that just kind of hit me, not hitting me hard, but it just kind of just already going, wait a minute, you're supposed to know this, but not really. It was mostly this aspect of a deeper understanding for why, when you hold resentment, when you hold, um, how do you say, it? When you hold resentment, when you start hating on something, or just comments, even throwaway comments are still biting you back in a way, and there's a much more deeper understanding to that, which we might as well get into. And it's kind of like, again, like said in some of the Gumroad audios, it's always coming from you. So whatever you're kind of spotting that kind of makes you react, okay, doesn't matter if it's on social media, if it's in front of you, if it's on TV, except if it's a show, okay. But even that, there's some interesting little gray zone that could be explored, because again, non-duality, maybe it is, maybe it ain't. It's always up to you to look into it within yourself and figure it out. But this is one thing to keep in mind, is that whenever you're gonna criticize, judge, react out of resentment, what else, just kind of shit talk somebody, it'll always bite you back, because initially it comes from your idea, your projection, your hard drive. It's not necessarily that the other person is XYZ. It's your perception of that other person. It's coming from you. It's your repeated pattern. And your maybe, your maybe not. Here's where that kind of gets a bit tricky. I say yours, or that being said, maybe it's not something you necessarily choose. And there's also the fact that maybe you didn't necessarily kind of think about these things, or these habits true. It's kind of like a sense that we're born in a society that already has a momentum rolling. So there's a various stuff like that. One of the best example is when we were kids, we didn't give a fuck about politics. There's a good reason for that, but there's an initial aspect of we were just busy doing the things that we do, learning. Again, initial brain is a sponge practically, so you're continuously learning at high speed around that age, playing, discovering, creating, imagining. And interestingly enough, especially in our generation, we saw the birth of reality TV show. We saw the birth of more kind of like this attempt to make things real. And we start seeing habits of how do we frame this character to make it interesting? How do we frame that character to add conflict? And that's why you start seeing like patterns, habits of characters or people, seemingly real, yet kind of made to be, or framed to be, looking like crazy, completely, because it adds to the drama. But the thing is, when you step back from the frame, okay, from the way that this person has been written, or the way that, let's say, the show has been written to show this person as this, okay, when you step back and you kind of go back to the aspect that, well, when you're not the hard drive, that's one. Always keep that as a key. You're not your mind. You're not the hard drive. You're not the memories. You're not the patterns. And the same fucking goes for everyone else. You start kind of seeing that, well, one, maybe that person never really understood how that worked. Maybe that wasn't necessarily, as an example, reality TV show, the crazy person. Maybe it's not necessarily something that they actually wanted, knowing the furthest consequences. Because when you think about it, sometimes you react, but you never really thought about, okay, 10 steps ahead, that reaction, if I keep repeating it, am I going to get fucked over by my own repetition? You don't think about that. You're never really taught that. So you kind of understand that the attitude and then the framing that they often do in those shows, it's BS. Once you get back to the, you kind of reflect it back to yourself, and you kind of go, well, no, I wouldn't necessarily know about these things. Or when you don't know, you don't fucking know. It's logic, it's natural. So there's certain habits and patterns that aren't necessarily picked up by people, because over time you just run it over and over and over naturally, because you're like, okay, well, everyone else in my environment is doing something like that, or they're doing the same thing, right? Or some background, some trauma happened with the person, and it leads them to acting this certain way in the show, or they're being shown, but it leads them to act a certain way. Yet you never really get to know what's going on inside that person, because context and nuances are unique to each and every person. You're never going to get a full detail spectrum of the context and nuance of a person in a show. It'll be like talking for hours to show you the details in the person's feeling at each and every event, leading to a conclusion that leads to you to their now current present mental space and reaction and emotions and way of speaking. And even then, you'll never feel it to the same degree as that person who actually felt it through those times. Oh, just the fact that maybe even younger people might be looking at it and not necessarily understand the context that this person was in, like earlier years, and what was the context then, which led to certain ways of thinking, certain ways of acting, and maybe unconsciously as well. Definitely unconsciously. There's various things that we're not necessarily conscious about, and we're always going to discover more. The game is basically getting a bit more conscious about it all and playing around with that. You don't need to be absolutely 100% conscious, but it would be awesome. Yet when you kind of put that into perspective, you kind of understand that, okay, well, that's the situation with that person that's being framed this way, but they are not the frame. They're not really the way that they've been framed. And you reflect it back on yourself, and you're like, oh yeah, well, that would be kind of shitty if I didn't know about a specific habit that I couldn't, perception, especially when it comes to the hard, not being the hard drive, and understanding that it's the lens. When you're working with that lens, oftentimes the lens will shield you from stuff that you would actually want to work on, in a sense. Out of it ultimately wants your safety as the brain, that primal aspect of it. I want you to be 100% safe at all cost, including your own benefit. But again, those are deeper things to go into. Yet you kind of want to, like, after setting all that up, you kind of want to understand that you don't need to take the frame that's being given in those television shows. But the issue is, upon having that framing repeated over and over and over, and even when it comes to certain characters that you have in your favorite TV shows, or stereotypes of characters repeated over and over and over, the brain's kind of used to, oh, well, this person's a jerk. Oh, well, this person's this. Oh, well, this is this kind of person or this kind of character. But it's like this quick and easy way that the brain's kind of like, okay, well, even if, let's say, the other people in the show call out this character that way, well, then it must be true. And it's like, well, no. Again, go back to what we've been talking about, patterns and behaviors and all that. And it's like, well, really, you're going to cast a stone on that person just willy-nilly? And that's been a habit. That's just been, again, when it comes to media, you look at this shit, you look at media, and it's like just throwaway comments of, oh shit, this celebrity did this, so they must totally be like that. And it's like, but you don't fucking know what's in their head. But it becomes this quick and easy, like, finger pointing. And the thing is, even if it's a habit that's been perpetuated by, let's say, watching TV shows and all that, or even friend circles, used to know a lot of people that would get into these gripe sessions, and it's, again, perpetual habits of just finger pointing at each and every person. But the thing is, once you understand, you're not the hard drive, but you kind of understand the whole lens aspect of it, it's still coming from your lens. Whoever, and now I kind of get the whole parable that's like, whoever cast the first stone, or whoever never sinned, just cast the first stone. And it's like, you're still the one casting the stone as your finger pointing. it's still coming from you. It is still in your mindset. And this is where you kind of sit down and go, okay, well, do I want that? You just ask, not pointing fingers. You don't want to reverse that thing, and don't let the fucking brain reverse that thing. Depending on your background, sometimes, especially when you have very perfectionist parents, then that cycle could kind of pop up. But don't even fucking let it. Don't let it roll back. Just go, do you really want this habit? And if no, then just get rid of it. Don't beat yourself up over it. You don't know what you don't know. So when you start seeing perpetual habits like that of just finger pointing, it's got to be this person's fault, or that. And there's, of course, there's always more subtle levels of it, because even if it's a throwaway comment, on a YouTube video, it's still a stone being thrown, and it's still coming from your perception. So you want to play mid-max? Okay, clean it up and just ask yourself, do I really want this? What good is it giving me? What good is it bringing me? Because ultimately you start, the momentum of these patterns will kind of fuck with you. Literally, because after a while you start getting jaded and angry, because you start noticing, your finger pointing skills has leveled up so high unconsciously. It's not like you choose to level that shit up, but it's leveled up so high that you kind of have a beat on each and every little perceived bullshit that you spot in other people. And that will fucking make you miserable. Completely. Because unconsciously you've set yourself in a pattern that is not beneficial for you, hateful, and you wouldn't want to receive back from someone else's perception that may have been affected by whatever show, whatever environment, which is all due to their contexts and nuances. But imagine meeting a person like that. You might have met people like that, and do you want to hang out with that kind of person long enough? That long? I mean, fuck, I'd find it boring. Well, I did. But yeah, like eventually, and of course, it's not, again, it all kind of wraps around. It's not that kind of person's fault. There's a lot of things that we didn't know. There's a lot of things that studies, psychology, science did not know. We had no bloody clue about the effects that this increase of technology, especially when it comes to media and social media, would do. So, hey, live and learn. Choose. You can only choose in the current moment now. And at this point, you have all the choice of saying, okay, do I want to continue this habit or not? And is it beneficial for me? You can, who knows? Maybe, hey, if you're a comedian, if it's for an aspect of joke, if it's something else, there's always little leeways there, but ultimately it ends up being your life and your own patterns and your own habits. So just make sure you look 10 steps ahead when it comes to that kind of stuff. And ultimately, if you keep resentment, you're only hurting yourself. It's kind of like a pointless thing. Especially once you understand, okay, a cyclical nature of it all coming to this point. So cyclical nature of habits, behaviors being passed on, questions being asked, people going, okay, why is this happening? Why are we continuously doing this? Until a person asks that question and goes, okay, well, what would it be if we stopped? And then we get, an expansion. People, there's a change that kind of happens. It's not just why is this, why is this, why is this. There's why is this, and then how can we change this? What would it be if it changed? That being the better question. Well, how would it feel if it changed? And naturally, if you're out of this whole chucking stones or finger pointing, how would it feel? It'd feel freaking great. Your attention, your focus is on what you like, what you prefer, what you like to create. And then guess what? You're sending that out there, people connect to that, and your momentum just changed completely. So it's all in your hand and in your head, while not being your head. That's this interesting little thing about remembering that you're a soul, or the understanding this whole mind, body, soul thing. 2020, fuck it. It doesn't sound kooky anymore. Get in on this shit. Because even scientists started recording brainwave this aspect of brainwaves during meditation, and they are getting some amazing results on graph. So we're not here to fuck with this thing anymore. Like, you can't just chuck it away. It's like it's part of you. It's kind of like saying, okay, well, would you chuck away your physical health? Of course not, because you want to be in a wheelchair right now, or something else. No, it's part of you. It's a dynamic. Dynamic. Yeah, there we go. It's. I was gonna say it's a dynamic duo, but it's a trio. But yeah, it's a dynamic, and it's to be played with, not trying to be too serious about it. Again, you don't let the mind kind of take it into this must be this way, and then and then shoot yourself in the foot by finger pointing people that don't. Like some of the religious folks that we know. But no, you play with it. You kind of understand, hey, it's all in your own game, and you're the one feeling the benefits of it. If you notice certain people just going around and doing that often and often, let them be, but stay in the aspect or in the thought that it's going to change. It's bound to. Eventually, there's always a stopping point. You guys know that term, midlife crisis? Oftentimes happens to those kind of people. And those who kind of survive that, well, yeah. What I mean, like, those who kind of trudge through, and I've had maybe one or two encounters with the kind of people that kind of trudge through their midlife crisis without necessarily getting the message that they're supposed to get at that point, or without changing that behavior. And not really, it's an interesting sight. I mean, I'm talking about that kind of... Anyway, that would be a story for another time, but the main focus is don't chuck stones. And at that point, it's always on you, and you're always in control of it. So, hey, just pick up the controller and just choose. Do you want to keep leveling that up? Fuck no. You got choice. All right, later, guys.